My guest today is Connor Boyack, founder of the Libertas Network, a prolific author, the creator of the wildly popular Tuttle Twins book series, and now the new president of Praxis, the decade-old apprenticeship preparation and placement program that the Libertas Network recently acquired. Connor, welcome to the Liberated Podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Kerry.
It's great to have you on. It's great to have you back on. You were on the podcast with me a couple of years ago
That's
during the
right.
launch of your U.S. history children's book, which is a
hmm
fabulous textbook that I know many families have benefited from. You, of course, are the creator of Tuttle Twins, which is a favorite of many families, many households across the U.S., certainly a favorite in our household. And you've been an advocate of sort of looking at alternatives to college and different pathways to adulthood. You edited a series, a book called Skipping College back in 2019 that I was a contributor to. The great John Taylor Gatto contributed to it, one of his final contributions before, unfortunately, he passed away. Just some great voices in there. And now with Praxis, really kind of digging deeper into the alternatives to college movement and again, these multiple pathways to adulthood. But let's start, Connor, if we could, maybe back in 2019 with the publication of Skipping College, where again, you kind of lay out this vision of at least questioning the kind of school to college pipeline and maybe planting the seeds for other parents and students to think about alternatives to that college route. I wonder if you could talk about your motivation for that book.
Well, the motivation is, I think, to me, one of the more interesting parts of it. Like you, speak at a number of conferences and events, and a lot of mine are homeschool conferences because of the Tuttle Twins. And what I was finding over the years, this is, 2014 to 2018-ish, you would have all these parents who attended these homeschool conferences very proud of themselves for not having their children on the K to 12 conveyor belt, right? Oh, we do things differently. We're independent. We forge a different path. And these moms largely would be very proud of themselves for that fact. And yet, inevitably felt pressure to put their children as they matured onto the college conveyor belt. And so I saw kind of a disconnect between this culture, this tribe of people who are like, no, we don't want to go through the system because of its problems, but then they lacked any experience or services or support systems out there to say, well, what would that look like in a college context? They were still buying into this idea that, well, that's just what you do, right? You've got to do that if you want to get a good job. So that was the motivation, was trying to figure out, all right, what kind of message can we share with those parents who already perhaps themselves are a bit more independent minded, but they haven't yet translated that over to the college context. Though provocatively titled, the book Skip College does not ultimately say that everyone ought to do so. It's really just to kind of, shake people a little bit and say, pay attention to the abundant alternatives that now exist, right? The world is different than it was 20, 30, 50 years ago. And so as a parent or as a teenager, right, it's incumbent upon you to review those options and say, well, is college the best option for me? For some professions, for some people, sure, it definitely is. And obviously, some colleges are better than others in terms of their kind of liberal arts education or creating critically thinking, individuals. But for a lot and increasingly more young people, college is probably not the right answer. So then the question becomes, what are their options? What can we put in front of them? Isaac Morehouse, alongside you, was one of the contributors to that book. He's the founder of Praxis. We actually dedicated the proceeds of that book to Praxis. So we've been longtime fans of Praxis and kind of fellow travelers, and that relationship kind of matured and culminated in the recent acquisition.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about Praxis. Of course, founded by Isaac Morehouse more than 10 years ago, and now a part of the Libertas Network. What was your rationale for acquiring this apprenticeship program? Kind of different from some of the other initiatives that the Libertas Network has been a part of, especially involved with publishing and advocacy and all of that. What was it about this particular program that you found appealing?
Well, Libertas Network is focused on families. we think that the best way to advance the cause of freedom is to reach, teach, and engage families. If we can show how our ideas are relevant at the family dinner table, that's going to have way more penetration into the lives of those people as opposed to just a random lecture or YouTube video or white paper or event. And so, with all of our different projects, the Tuttle Twins, the children's entrepreneur markets, even the policy work and more, and now Praxis, we're trying to find ways to connect directly with parents and their children, even their older children, to create value for them and show them how to build successful lives, the political principles and ideologies that will best translate to success, the mental models and habits and how to build a good life, the education and the experience that you can gain to do so. I fear that oftentimes us in the freedom movement, we relegate ourselves to kind of the academic, conceptual, abstract world, right? We teach these philosophical ideas, but few among us help individuals translate in that into real world action. And so that's kind of our niche with Libertas Network, right? We're teaching entrepreneurship, but then this year we're going to help over 100,000 kids through the Children's Entrepreneur Market Project launch a small business, right? So it's not about like read a book about entrepreneurship. It's also about, hey, let us help you actually get started and have some fun and apply these ideas. So Praxis for us was an opportunity to say, look, we talk about higher education reform. We've talked about, in our book, Skip College, some of these ideas. Let's actually lean into the practical side and bring Praxis into the fold, and we're going to 10x it and add a bunch of programs to it, all designed to help young people thrive and apply a lot of these ideas directly in their lives to their benefit.
So what are some of those 10x plans, Connor? What is the vision for Praxis as it moves into the next decade?
Uh, it largely revolves around three different things. The first one is, we just acquired Praxis like a month ago. It's been very recent, so we've got to kind of stabilize things and find a lot of efficiencies, which we're in the process of. But then beyond that, step one is really to scale it up. Praxis, over its 10, 12-year history, served about 900 graduates total. And keep in mind, like the main benefit of Praxis in my mind, there's a lot of little bullet points, but like the main one is this can make the difference of $250,000 in the life of a Praxian. Why? Because you're avoiding 4 years of college debt, and that could be 50 to $100,000. But then also you're gaining 4 years of earnings by more quickly getting into, full-time gainful employment. And so when you avoid all the debt and you add the 4 years of earnings, that could be $250,000. So 900 students is great, but that's over its lifetime. Within like 2 years, our goal is to be doing 900 students or more per year. We really want to scale it up and reach way more people. So that's number one is how do we literally 10x the volume of students that we're serving in Praxis? Number two, the next project that we're going to build out is an entrepreneurial arm for Praxis. Right now, Praxis is focused on W-2 employment, right? Hey, let's help you get a job. And that's great for most people. But there's a lot of, Praxis applicants who are more interested in starting their own thing. What would it look like if rather than us connecting them to a job, we had a back office support system where we empower them to go build their business and we take care of legal and accounting and all the things that they don't want to have to do. And we can have a supportive network. We're even going to launch a Praxis investment fund where Praxis alumni can invest in the up and coming businesses in like a friends and family round, right? For these early kind of seed stage entrepreneurs coming out of Praxis. So then we create this ecosystem where there's actually peer investment and getting these businesses off the ground. So that's number two. Number three is what I'll call our top of funnel program, right? Praxis is a commitment. You're in it for a few months. Right now, tuition's, I think, $15,000. So it does come with a serious skin in the game type of commitment.
Mm.
What we're going to build, though, for this third phase is a more top of funnel entry into Praxis, which costs way less and involves much less time. And this is designed more for the 17 or 18-year-olds who are just coming out of high school or homeschool, and they don't quite yet know, do I want to be a business owner? Do I want a job? What kind of job? They're still trying to figure that out. Now, in the traditional world, most kids sit at a desk for 4 years in college while they're still figuring that out. They change majors 3 times. They end up with a degree that they don't use in their career, right? Rather than taking all that time and money for your self-discovery, we're going to have a program in Praxis for these 17, 18-year-olds where think of it like the Boy Scout merit badge system, right? Like, oh, you're swimming, your CPR merit badge, your hiking, your first aid, all these things. We're going to create like a gamified, experiential way to bombard these young people with little bits of experience so that they can figure out, do I like this or don't I like this, right? Hey, launch an Etsy store or learn how to vibe code a mobile app or go drive for Uber, or serve with this organization in Bangladesh, right? Or like we're going to have all kinds of experiences, professions that are in this ecosystem and we'll have a gamified process. So then the idea is these kids can spend 2 or 3 months going through this introductory praxis program and get short bursts of exposure to a lot of different things so that they can start to figure out what they do and don't like. And then from there, they can niche down and pursue that in our deeper praxis programs. But we want to create this kind of broader exposure opportunity just to help young people start to wrap their heads around what they might want to do in the future. So we got more ideas, but
Mm.
those are the main three that we're pursuing over the next 3 years.
Yeah, I love that opportunity for experimentation, for enabling young people to figure out, as you say, what they do and don't like. And again, that focus on entrepreneurship is a key part of this. It reminds me of the book by George Mason economist Brian Kaplan, his book, The Case Against Education, where he makes the argument that a large part of education, especially higher ed, is focused on signaling and sort of creating these signals for employers that you're competent, reliable, able to follow through, those sorts of things. But that we don't necessarily need college to do that, that we can have sort of other paths of signaling to employers the certain qualities and skills that they're looking for. I wonder what your thoughts are on some of those signals that today's employers are really seeking in young people and how programs like Praxis can help to foster those signals.
Well, I'll put my employer hat on for a moment.
Yeah.
Across all of Libertas Network, we probably have like 150 people or so working with us now. So we hire a lot of people. And look, getting a stack of resumes is just not a great experience for anyone, let alone the ambitious applicant who wants to stand out. You can't do the bare minimum. I tell young people all the time, I analogize it to dating, right? If you're swiping left in the app and telling, 800 women you're interested in them, that's not going to go very far. But if you identify someone that you're really interested in and you show that interest non-creepily, right? But you demonstrate you're interested, that's going to be well received. Same thing with an employer. I tell folks if people find creative ways, DM me on social media or whatever, and show even with the most basic of messages that they're paying attention to our work, that, hey, I read your newsletter, or I saw this post the other day that you guys did. Give some evidence that you care about and you're pursuing that company, you'll easily stand out. That becomes a huge signal amid the noise. How easy is it on LinkedIn to just hit apply, 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 apply? And that's not signaling to the employer that you're worth their time. And so there's a lot of strategies like this about how do you stand out? How do you, most importantly, create value for your employer? Another idea, I think Isaac actually wrote about this in our Skip College book. I might have got this from him years ago. But the idea is like, let's say you want a marketing job at a snowboarding production company. You can just throw in your resume and hope for the best, or you could go through their social media feed, do an audit, go into Canva for free and come up with, 3 designs that are even better, along with some really excellent copy that shows that you've done your homework and you know their brand. By the way, you can use ChatGPT to help you with all of this too. And you spend a little time creating something. You send that to the head of HR, the head of marketing, the head of whatever at this company, and you say, hey, I know you got this job open. I think I'm very qualified, but I want to show you that I'm very interested. I actually took the time to go review your social media. Here's these templates I've created. Your team is welcome to use them. No payment, no attribution, no nothing. I just want to show you a little bit of what I can do, and I'd love to contribute. So be happy to chat. If I got an email like that as an employer, I'd be like, who is this person? Like they took the time to do a little work to, again, signal to me how interested they are in my organization. So there's a lot of stuff like this that you can do to create value for your employer, to think differently, set yourself apart. You don't need a degree. As you well know, Kerry, after you get your first job, like let's say you do go to college, you get your first job, no future employer cares about your college experience. They just care about your previous job. Tell us about your experience. Tell us about what you can do. So the idea through Praxis is how do we immediately help these kids develop and demonstrate experience? How do we help them set up a website, a portfolio, start writing, start marketing, whatever it is? Let's kind of do that stuff right now so that when you go to an employer, you can say, check it out. Here's what I can do, and you're going to stand out way more than all the kids who went to college and now come hat in hand saying, please, sir, may I have a job? You got to stand out. And that's what Praxis is designed to help these applicants do.
That's great. So, polls show that Americans overall have soured on higher education in recent years. Only 36% of Americans in a recent Gallup report earlier this year said that they have a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in the higher education sector. That compares to 57% in 2015. So, in just 10 years, dropping from 57% confidence in higher ed to now 36% confidence. Additional polling of high school students finds that many high schoolers value on-the-job training, kind of real-life, practical career skills over a traditional four-year college degree. I recently wrote about alternatives to college in my 74 column, and I quoted you in there. And one of the things that you said in talking about Praxis and alternatives to college was you said, there have never been more reasons and more opportunities to build a successful life without spending the time, money, and mental energy pursuing that piece of paper, meaning the college diploma. What are some of those reasons? I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about what you're seeing in the young people that you're interacting with, the families that you work with. Why are they eager to potentially avoid college, skip college?
I think there's a number of reasons. One of the reasons why we've had that shift in polling, I think, is both because of kind of the consensus of the woke campus, problem, but also then you had, the Israel Palestine stuff, and that really pushed, I think, into the zeitgeist that these colleges for many campuses are more ideological breeding grounds than they are like academic in inquisitional curious environments. And so I've seen a lot of families reconsidering who even were before thinking, yeah, I'll send my kids to college or whatever, but again, that just kind of like shook them, grabbed them by the shoulders, and made them pay attention a little bit to realize, wow, things are different than they were when I went to college. A lot of parents fall into this trap, right? We have a bias that like I went to college and I turned out fine. And you're like, well, things are a little different than they were back in the 2000s or the 90s or whatever it is. I think financial reasons bear heavily on a lot of families. Of course, with the cost of eggs momentarily spiking or housing costs being high, there's a lot more sensitivity to cost. You've seen the charts, Kerry, that, especially with the hiring of all the administrative class on these campuses, tuition costs just keep going up and up, while one might argue that the quality is declining, if not stagnant. And so costs, I think, bear heavily, and it becomes really just an ROI decision for a lot of families. Well, okay, if I, spend 80 grand on 4 years of tuition, is that going to set my child up for success? Or because of, Praxis or trade schools or coding camps or AI or any number of other things, maybe that 80 grand could be better spent, or maybe those 4 years could be better spent to help my child up, set them up for success. And so the abundance of alternatives that are emerging, coupled with the increased recognition of cost, financial cost, ideological cost, even academic cost, I think leads a lot of families to just hit the pause button and say, okay, like, is this the right decision or should we explore other things? And then, of course, through social media and the internet, it's never been easier to go find those alternatives and research them. Whereas before, you just had this well-trodden path that everyone would go down because it's just what you did and the conveyor belt carried you forward, as it did me. I went to college. I was told that's what you need to do. I never questioned it. I never had anyone in my life who prompted me to question it at the time. And it was only during my senior year, I used to be a web developer, and I was starting to get some freelance clients on the side. I would literally sit in class working on clients' websites while sitting in IT classes being taught by 60-year-old professors who themselves were having to learn these new technologies to then teach them to us. Meanwhile, the profit motive is incentivizing me to learn all kinds of stuff on my own that I'm not learning in class. So only then did I start to think like, why am I paying for this class if I could instead be making money? And it didn't click enough for me to drop out. But in retrospect, I wish that I would have had someone saying, hey, here are these alternatives. Here are these options. At least think about them. At least have an intentional decision. If you want to go to college, that's great. But there's probably ways to do it faster and cheaper than kind of the default conveyor belt process. I just didn't have anyone in my life. And so I feel like part of acquiring Praxis and bringing it under the fold is to be that influence in the lives of many to say, look, if you're going to go to college, that's great. But we at least want to help you see this abundant world of alternatives so that you can make the best decision for you.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about the work of Richard Reeves, who is the president of the American Institute for Boys and Men. He's written many books, including one recent one called Of Boys and Men: Why the Modern Male is Struggling, Why It Matters, and What to Do About It. One of the things that he talks about are sort of data points that young men tend to be attending college at lower rates than young women, graduating college at lower rates than young women, and these trends sort of pervade K to 12 and beyond, including into the workplace and in adulthood. And so it seems to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it does seem to me that the sort of apprenticeship model or young people who are skipping college tend to be more heavily leaning to boys than to girls. I guess, is that true and from your experience? And then if young women are interested in skipping college, what are sort of the pathways for them? Because we often think about trades or other types of work experiences that might appeal to boys more than girls. What are you seeing in the way of kind of college alternatives for young women?
Well, I think what you describe is certainly true for like the trade schools. You know, those are perhaps more physically demanding jobs, a lot of them, and those professions naturally attract far more men or almost entirely men as opposed to women. So the trade schools out there, which are awesome, and I think we need way more of them. And frankly, like, man, you go into the trades, you can make six figures within like 2 to 3 years, if not year one, be debt free. Like there's so many kids pursuing that path and good for them. There's an amazing opportunity. They are mostly boys for the reasons that they're more physically gruesome jobs a lot of times. In Praxis, historically, it's been far more mixed. I think that's largely due to the fact that a lot of the jobs that Praxis places these Praxians into are more kind of knowledge worker roles, right? Sales, a lot of marketing, operations, stuff like that, which is equally suitable to men and to women. And so we see, the female applicants in Praxis pursuing a lot of these jobs. There's a number of girls. So we haven't really noticed any other factors historically in Praxis that stand out on a gender basis, just because most of the jobs are, equally suited to anyone, everyone. Whereas you do look at the trades and you do see that marked difference. I've noticed the same stats that you've shared about college, that more boys are either dropping out or not going, that the graduation rates are higher for women. I think there's probably a lot of other factors into why that's happening. I mean, you even look at like the decline of testosterone and sperm and everything. Like there's all kinds of like meta issues going on here with what's happening to our boys. Um, but at least for our part, what we're doing, it's kind of an equal opportunity thing that doesn't really matter, boys or girls. They're all kind of applying the same and succeeding too in getting these jobs that are able to be done by anybody.
Great. So, if listeners and viewers are intrigued by Praxis and pursuing an alternative to college, what would they find in going to the website, discoverpraxis.com? That's the website. What would they want to do? Would they sign up for that larger commitment, that financial commitment, or should they start with the sort of more experimental model? What is the sort of suggested strategy from your perspective for visitors to the site?
Well, I would say if anyone's curious but not yet ready to commit to anything, probably the Skip College book would be an easy first step. Just read that with your, 16, 17, 18-year-old or whatever, and just start to toss these ideas around in your head. Is this even a path that we want to pursue? You go to the website if you're really interested in looking into the program, you'll find an outline of what it is. We're rebuilding the whole website. We'll launch a new one in a few months, but the one for now suffices to say, here's what this program is. It's a several month commitment. You're going to be equipped with all these schools. You'll go through these different courses at your own pace. You'll have a one-on-one mentor that you'll be able to connect with. You'll have peers in your cohort to support one another. You'll have this amazing alumni community of Praxians who just this morning I was in the Slack channel and someone's like, hey, I'm looking for a job, and people are jumping in to give referrals. It's just a really tight knit alumni network. And so, it is a big commitment. And I will point out one thing. Praxis historically did have a job guarantee. If we don't get you a job, then, you don't pay us anything. And it was a big burden on Praxis to say, we got to fulfill our part. Otherwise, we're not going to collect that tuition revenue. A couple years ago, they dropped that. We currently don't have the job guarantee. We are, however, bringing that back. And so when we do a big kind of relaunch this summer, that will be part of it. And so for those interested, depending on the timing, you could apply now and then we'll kind of grandfather you in, or you can apply later. But we very much want to bring Praxis back into that where we say, look, we recognize this is an investment, but the ROI is massive because the average starting salary for Praxian graduates is 50 grand. So you pay 15 grand, you get a great education, you get connected to this alumni community that's going to bring benefits in the years to come. And then you get a job and you do all that in the course of, 4 months, 6 months. And so you're saving a ton of time. You're basically debt free and already earning way more money. The funny thing with Praxis, Kerry, is like, think of this silly example. 18-year-old, two 18-year-olds, one goes to college, one goes to Praxis. The one that goes to Praxis gets a job. 4 years later, when their same age peer, that other one, graduates college, that person is now applying for an entry-level job. Who's their manager? Oh, it's their same age peer who now has 4 years of job experience, graduated from Praxis, by the way, is debt-free, has built up enough of a savings to buy their home, start their life, whereas their same age peer is just now getting an entry-level job, is saddled with tens of thousands of dollars of debt that's going to take them a long time to pay off, and they're starting, at their entry-level position. So for financial reasons, if not for ideological reasons and so many others, to me, Praxis is kind of a no-brainer. So months ahead, we're going to be really polishing the marketing, relaunching the website, and then really do a big push to start to 10x this thing.
I love that job guarantee. I'm sure that's very appealing for families and students pursuing this path. What are some of the age parameters? Do you allow teens below the age of 18 to join Praxis? I mean, is it something that they kind of experiment with and maybe just put off college or kind of keep college in the back burner? Or do you expect them to be 18 when they're joining Praxis?
Yeah, we'll take especially as we add some of these top of funnel programs, we're gonna go more into the 17, 16-year-olds. Right now, you could apply and enter Praxis before being 18. The kicker is by the time you graduate, you got to be a legal adult so that we can then place you in that job and we don't have any HR issues to deal with the company, the partner companies. But yeah, you can certainly apply when you're 17. You could do it fresh out of high school or homeschool and say, look, maybe I'll go to college, but let's just hold off on that decision for now. Let's try this
Yeah.
Praxis thing. It has a much lower commitment of time and cost. And then if that falls apart, I'm still super young. I got all the time in the world. I can go to college if that's what I really want to do. So it's a great in between. Certainly there's a ton of Praxians who are college dropouts. There are college graduates who come into Praxis because college didn't get them the professional entry and success that they wanted. But by and large, you're either, in between school and college when you're entering Praxis, or you're a dropout. That's what most of these kids end up doing. But we definitely do want to expand the ages so that we can bring more people into it.
So that's on the apprentice side. What about on the employer side? If someone is listening and are really eager to support apprentices and be a part of the Praxis network, what do they need to do from the employer perspective?
And I appreciate this question, Clary, Kerry. One thing to clarify, Praxis also used to have an apprenticeship model where they would place you in a paid apprenticeship, and then coming out of that is you would just get the job with that same company. That's not the model that Praxis currently does, nor that we're doing in the future. We're moving away from the kind of apprenticeship. It had a lot of logistical complexity. So we're trying to simplify so that we can scale. So really, Praxis is like a 4 to 6 month educational cohort where we just get these kids really prepared, and then we connect them with a job without the apprenticeship stuff in the middle. On the company side, this is such an important question. So many companies struggle with finding high quality entry level talent. How do they sift, right? Again, signal and noise. They have a lot of noise of people applying and just hitting that apply button on Indeed or on LinkedIn. How do they find the signal? So Praxis, we're positioning to our corporate partners as kind of a curation service of high quality entry level talent, where we'll go to them and we'll say, hey, look, we want to place 3 kids a year into, you hire 50, 100 people a year. Give us just 3, give us a commitment. We're going to start to place these people. And if you want more, we can expand from there. The benefit, of course, with Praxis's long life is there are a lot of companies who currently employ Praxis graduates and who love them. And so we're going to those companies saying, do you want more like that person? Let's kind of develop a relationship so that we can funnel these applicants directly into you. So if you're out there, you're a business owner, anything like that, please reach out on the website. We're building out that corporate network right now. And that's part of what we're going to be relaunching and with the job guarantee in the fall. So we definitely want to have a lot of companies, diverse companies, startups to Fortune 500 companies, remote to in person, all kinds of industries, so that these kids who have different interests, we can try and place them in jobs that are going to be better suited to them.
Great. So just so I understand, Connor, because it does sound like the model has shifted from the early days of Praxis with the apprenticeship piece. Are you then placing people into jobs, into kind of full-time jobs? Are there still sort of internship opportunities, part-time? What does that look like?
So the job guarantee will be a full-time
Yeah,
paid salaried position. As we
great.
build out some of the additional Praxis programs I mentioned, we'll probably explore some of those different alternatives that are
Yeah.
lower friction, lower commitment. But for the foreseeable future, it very much is going to be, let's get you ready for a job. Let's place you into a job. Off you go. And look, along the way, if you want to do some distance education college classes to still, soak in that stuff while you have an amazing full-time job, more power to you. So we just want to give as many options as possible. It'll take us a little while to get there, which is why we'll be focused for now just on the full-time job guarantee. But I anticipate over time we'll start to build out some of those additional opportunities as well.
So as we wrap up, Connor, I'd love to hear what your predictions are for the future of college and the future of alternatives to college. Do you think that Americans will continue to frown upon higher ed? Do you think that that 36% number will continue to decline in terms of confidence levels, and more of these alternatives to college will gain traction? I guess, what are your predictions?
Well, we saw during the pandemic how K to 12 school choice polling numbers skyrocketed. It was like a 10% shift. Why? Because parents had this kind of wake up aha moment. Wait a minute, my kid can do in 2 hours at home what takes them 7 hours in school. Like parents were confronted with the the situation enough where they started to change their opinion. I think that the world we're in now with higher education, we're going through a similar perception shift in large part due to AI. If my kid can generate from ChatGPT whatever the answer is or whatever the Scantron bubble sheet says or whatever, right? What is the point of education if regurgitating facts and memorizing things and filling your mind full of tidbits of knowledge can be replaced with a supreme intelligence that I can consult at any time? So I think that's going to cause a huge shift in education. Kerry, my prediction is that I think education writ large is going to have to shift toward an oral examination strategy, away from the essays, away from the Scantron sheets. We're going to have to get to a truly Socratic style of education where we're having conversations with one another, where a professor or an AI avatar professor is talking to the student in conversation to see, do you know this stuff? Can we educe from your mind the critical thinking and the observations about this idea? That is what fundamentally education should be about. Is this person equipped to go out into the world and solve problems and understand themselves? And so I don't know quite what that looks like, but I feel like AI is just such a massive disruption that it's going to force a huge reconsideration of how we educate children. It's going to cause parents to question, is this investment worth it? Like, why does my kid need to spend all this money and time to do this if the world is just so different that maybe that's not going to be necessary in today's economy. So I don't quite know what that looks like, other than I think the way we assess knowledge and test students is radically going to shift. All I know is I'm excited for it. I want to lean into it. And I think that the schooling industry, the education industry, needs to stop preparing kids for an economy of 50 years ago, which is typically what they do. We need to equip our kids. I want to equip my own children with the skills and the tools that are going to empower them to succeed in the world of tomorrow. And I think it's never been easier and more exciting to do. So I'm pumped, and I hope a lot of parents are out there too. Praxis can be one part of that. There's many other solutions, but I think we have a bright new future ahead of us.
So again, the Praxis website is discoverpraxis.com. Connor, if folks want to learn more about the Libertas Network, follow you and your work, what is the best way for them to do that?
So libertas.org is where you can find us, or social media. Just look up Connor Boyack. We're very easy to find. So be sure and follow us for some spicy hot takes on social media and trying to shift the narrative and the conversation about all these ideas.
Sounds exciting, Connor. Thank you so much for being on the Liberated podcast. I look forward to having you on again sooner than later.
Thanks for having me, Kerry.